Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of Rosa Parks' death. In honor of her role in the beginning of the civil rights movement, we, the CNN Podcast News, start a series about important persons and events.
Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to...
I have no doubts that every one of you knows this famous guy, don't you? For the few persons who really don't know him, I will give some help. He is the leader of the civil rights movement. Of course, it's Martin Luther King Jr. To start with some information about his life, we have asked Professor Binz from the University in Atlanta.
Martin Luther King Jr. was born on the 15th of January in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. He was the leader of the civil rights movement in the United States and advocated a nonviolent protest against racial discrimination. In 1954, he became a pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Alabama. At the Boston University, he got the doctor in systematic theology, although he was a black man. In 1955 to 1956, he led a successful effort at the Montgomery bus boycott. He helped to found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1957 and became its first president. In 1963, he held the speech "I Have a Dream" to the civil rights marches at Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. After that, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. In the following year, he organized a march from Selma to Montgomery and created a national support for the federal voting rights legislation. At least he was murdered on the 4th of April in 1968 at Lorraine Motel in Memphis.
America is shocked and saddened by the brutal slaying tonight of Dr. Martin Luther King. I ask every citizen to reject the blind violence that has struck Dr. King, who lived by nonviolence.
Thank you, Professor Binz. But can you explain what exactly the Southern Christian Leadership Conference is?
The Montgomery bus boycott was carried out by the newly established Montgomery Improvement Association. In 1954, they shortened its name to Southern Leadership Conference. But wait, I prepared an audio recording.
SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, created by Bipin Yankonek and Varun Mata. The SCLC played a key role in the civil rights movement. It was formed by Dr. Martin Luther King, along with 60 other ministers in 1957, in the aftermath of the Montgomery bus boycotts. The goal of this organization was equal civil rights for all minorities, and to ensure that the Civil Rights Act, along with the Voting Rights Act, were passed by Congress. Also, they wanted to achieve desegregation of all public facilities. The strategies in doing so were organizing mass nonviolent protests so that desegregation was achieved in both Birmingham and Selma. The SCLC worked to improve voter registration for minorities by citizenship schools. They performed marches in support of civil rights so that pressure was brought on Washington to pass the Civil Rights and Voter Rights Acts, and also to interfere in stopping brutal crackdowns by southern state governments, while encouraging black student enrollment in white schools to force desegregation. These strategies were very successful, as civil rights and voting rights were achieved by all minorities. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference were known for being instrumental in affiliating black churches with the organization, and arranged nonviolent protests to advance civil rights for the blacks.
Thank you, Professor Binz. This information were very helpful to understand Martin Luther King's aims and his opinion. In the following, you will hear 2 short extracts of interviews with people of color. The first was made after the end of slavery. I apologize for the bad sound in some cases. The second interview was made short after the speech of Martin Luther King Jr.
Hello, Mr. Garden, nice to have you here. Finally, slavery is abolished, even if some people do not like it. I hope you can answer some of my questions to show these people what slavery did to you.
Hello. Yes, it was a hard and formative time, but I will try to make my feelings understandable.
Okay, first of all, I want you to tell our listeners some of the experiences you made during your time as a slave.
I could tell you a lot about the horrible experiences I made, but it would be too long. Whatever I tell, nobody is able to relate to it. Slavery was cruel and inhuman. You, as a slave, had no rights, no education, nothing what is normal for whites. But that's not all. The worst was that they treated you like an object, like an animal. We had to work, work, work. There was nothing what could have saved us from this. If you refused, they blistered you.
Welcome, Mr. James. As you know, we are talking about Martin Luther King Jr. and his speech "I Have a Dream" in this radio show. What did you think about it when you heard the speech last week?
Oh, he's a king, really. Of course, slavery is already abolished, but the discrimination and segregation of the races lasts. He's someone who fights against it, without violence. He's someone who utters what we all think. I admire him for this courage, and I hope he will not give up until he achieves his or our aims. We are equal, and we want to live peaceful together with the whites.
Now you will hear the opposite opinion, an interview with a white man. Hello, Mr. Evans. Thank you for the allowance to ask you some questions. I saw you listening to Martin Luther King's speech. What do you think about his ideas?
Hello. At first, I want to make obvious that a black man whose name I don't want to speak out should be arrested and punished for bringing such unrealistic ideas in the other black men's heads. I can't react in another way like this.
Why is there such an adversing attitude toward black men in your head?
You don't want to take this question for real, do you? Black men were brought to America for doing their work in our services. They aren't here to live like a king with all the rights we have. They have to work for our prosperity, and it can't be allowed that those people influence our workers in such a negative way.
Why do you think that Luther King's speech have a negative influence on other black men?
I can tell you. In all social systems there must be a class which does low work. We need such a class, or we don't have the upper class which provides for progress and civilization. The black workers form the actually carrying beam of our society and political system. With ideas like that worker told, he probably changes the other black workers' attitude towards working and makes them think about their non-dependent life. We would lose the working class, which is urgent for our prosperity. That's the negative influence.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Thank you. I hope you understood what I want to tell you.
To sum up, one can say that Martin Luther King was an intelligent man who starts to encourage all blacks to fight for their rights. Maybe fight is not the right expression, because all his actions were non-violent, what makes it more appreciative. Finally, he achieved the abolition of the segregation and the full suffrage for the black population, but paid it with his life. I hope you enjoyed our podcast about Martin Luther King. Next week, we are talking about Rosa Parks. Hope you will join us. Good evening.